If you Google Rabbi Lapin, one of the first things that comes up is a book called Led by Greatness. You highlight the importance of aligning leadership with values. Can you elaborate on how this principle has influenced your leadership approach for Matmonim and teaching Torah?
I think, if anything, it's the other way around. It's how Torah has really affected the leadership approach. So taking a step back, the fact that I went into business is not because I love business or I wanted to make money. I realized I would have limited time for business because so much of my time would be in learning and teaching the Torah in any case. So I realized I wasn't going to become the super successful, mega wealthy business person. That wasn't the idea of going into business. The idea of going into business was to protect and preserve my intellectual independence, so that in the area of Torah I could learn and teach without having to satisfy a particular audience. Since nobody was paying me and I was not beholden to anybody, right, throughout my life, that has been the case. I felt the freedom which very few Rabbonim have, the freedom to be able to say what I believe to be true and right, based on what I've been taught by my teachers, by my Rabbeim, and the Torah that I've taught. So going into business, and at first I just went into, I had the opportunity to go into international commodity trading, which was an opportunity for me to get to know the world and to understand the world. Later on, in order to have more time, because my responsibilities in the trading company were becoming too great, so I started my own small company trading in pearls, and then felt that the amount of time I was spending in business would be better spent if I could be doing something aligned to my Torah world in business rather than selling commodities or making widgets. And so I developed the consulting company, which today is called Lapin International. And the idea of the consulting company was to research whether through the Torah I could discover solutions to some of the biggest problems that would be facing business over the next 20 years at that time. We're going back now to the beginning of the 90s. And I gathered together a committee of CEOs, a group of CEOs. I started a non-profit. I didn't think anybody was going to pay for the service. It was something that I just was really interested in. So I got together this group of amazing CEOs of very large public companies in South Africa, not Jewish people. One or two of them were Jewish. And we started looking at what were the biggest challenges that we're going to be facing business. If we took a 20-year view, what did we think that was going to be? And some of the things we came up with was that as technology increased and information was going to be more widely diffused, competition was going to become very difficult because everybody would know everything about everybody. It would be difficult to create proprietary products that nobody else could access. As technology became more widespread, it was just easier to copy and to reverse engineer. So competition was going to be a serious thing, and that the world needed a different way of looking at the competitive angle of business strategy. The other was how people were going to fare, because it was clear that there was going to be a super drive for efficiency, and that the victims of those drives were going to be employees. It was a matter of now squeezing more and more output from less and less input. And at that time, still people, and probably today as well, were one of the biggest expenses in business. It was clear that people were going to be compressed. How were they going to retain their human spirit? What was going to happen to innovation? Would people be spirited enough to really innovate? Would they be thinking enough to really innovate? These were some of the things we started looking at. Then I applied my mind to the Torah and thought, what would happen if we started applying some of the universal lessons of the Torah? Of course, not the religious parts of the Torah. I wasn't interested in spreading religion, and certainly wasn't interested in spreading Yiddishkeit, spreading Judaism around the world. But there's so much that is universally true in the Torah, and if we could take those universal truths, the whole idea of business law, choshen mishpat in the Torah, is something which the whole world is meant to be keeping. It's one of the Noachide laws, to observe the ethics and legality of business conduct. So there are many parts of the Torah which are not specific for Jewish people, and they're not specific to religious practice. They're ways of living. They're conforming to the blueprint by which God designed the world. That's really what the Torah is. God had a design in mind. The world, the universe, is a system. The super systems thinker of all times, of course, is Hashem himself. So Hashem creates this universal system of which we're just a small part. And he gives us the Torah as the blueprint of how the system works. And once one has an understanding of how the system works, we can start solving for things that perhaps general information and general knowledge, secular knowledge, was not really solving for. And then we got into the opportunity to do some really interesting research from one of the biggest gold mines in the world in South Africa, looking at the impact of culture on productivity in business, different cultures, and the impact of values and ethics on culture. So we were starting to track how a person's values, the way he was brought up by his or her parents, affect who they are, the culture from which they come, and how that in turn affects the way they think about business and the way they act in business and their levels of productivity. So from there, I started developing a methodology which is articulated in Lead by Greatness. And the idea of Lead by Greatness is you're a great human being. Hashem created you. You're a divine human being. If you would use some of that greatness in your business, what would happen? Firstly, what would happen to your business? And secondly, what would happen to you and the people around you? What kind of impact could you have in the world? What kind of influence could you have in the world? I realized that by working with business leaders, I was impacting or potentially impacting thousands and thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people, because each business leader has such a broad impact and such a wide reach. And therefore, if I could help business people access and tap their divine spirit and bring that to the fore in the way they engage with the people around them at work and in the way they go to work and the way they do their work and function in business, what might happen? So we started doing it, and we had companies who allowed us to do the experimentation and the research, and we saw some incredible results with very little input from a financial perspective, because you're talking about ideas, you're talking about thinking, behavior. So very little financial input. There was enormous financial outcome. And that's when we turned the business from being a non-profit research business into a for-profit consulting company.
Can the Rob share an example in your own experience for you, not a client, but for you, where uncovering a Matmonim, a hidden treasure, hidden insight, shifted the direction of your leadership or thinking?
Well, it happens almost every day, because each day what's important about the Matmon is it's not just revealing a new insight for you all, for the people who taking the time, investing the time in learning with me. It's my own learning. It's just the product of my own learning. So virtually every day I'll come up with a new angle, a new insight, a new understanding that usually can be applied to the way people run and operate their businesses or their professions or they manage their families and their day-to-day lives. If I were to think of a good example of that, so for example, let's take today's Matmon. Just happens to be fresh in my mind, where we learned the idea that as an individual, I shouldn't expect to be treated in any kind of special way. And I mentioned the fact that here in Israel, one learns that very rudely in a way. It's quite a rude awakening to the fact that in Israel, everybody is a somebody. And when everybody is a somebody, nobody is an anybody. So you've got to give up any ideas of being treated special, especially if you come from a country where you had achieved some recognition and you were accomplished or whatever. When you come to Israel, everybody's accomplished. Everybody had recognition where they were. Everybody's doing amazing things where they are. It's just a country of amazing people doing amazing things. So you learn something really important, and that is, I can't expect to be treated any differently from anybody else. But what was important in today's Matmon is the realization that informs my expectation of how others treat me, but that does not inform how I'm meant to treat others. I do need to treat people exceptionally. I do need to honor people for who they are. I do need to understand that some people deserve, whether because of their age or their wisdom or their Torah knowledge or their righteousness or their position in society, they are deserving of certain honor that I do need to give them. So this difference between expect nothing but give everything is such an important lesson that applies to leaders in business all the time. When it comes to your employees, you tend to, I won't say look down at people, but you've got hundreds of them or thousands of them, and they're all kind of replaceable, and one doesn't treat individuals with the honor that sometimes each one of them deserve. And I've learned, working with some of the lowliest of people who are not educated, people who are not literate, and learning with PhDs who are leaders of massive businesses or political organizations, I've learned that everybody has a story that is amazing, that everybody has a life story, and that everybody is the greatest expert in the world in their life story. So I might be talking to an illiterate person, a worker, a laborer, and he can't teach me quantum physics. He can't teach me calculus or philosophy. That's not his field. But he's learned things. He's picked things up. We talk about a zaken. The Gemara says in Kiddushin, a zaken, an old person, is zek shekana chokhmah. This is somebody who has imbibed wisdom. And that comes through the years, through living, through opportunities. So I've learned that everybody is an expert in their lives, and their lives have so much to teach each of us. So to become a student, halomed mikol adam, a chacham, what is a wise person? A wise person is one who is in perpetual learning. And you're in perpetual learning not only from your teachers, which include your textbooks, and in our case, the Gemara, the Torah, but also learning from life experience, learning from one another. And as you go through life and you meet these amazing people, you realize you've got to treat everybody with honor. And treating them with honor means treating them according to who they are as an individual, not just as a cog in a massive wheel in a massive system. We might see ourselves as cogs in a system, but we dare not see other people that way.